My name's Faye. I'm 35. And the night everything cracked open started with a single gift box, small enough to fit in my palm, heavy enough to tilt my entire world. Before that moment, honestly, I had convinced myself this year might finally be gentle. New job, new apartment, new haircut that didn't make me look like I was forever auditioning for a tax accountant calendar. Life was steady. But when I walked into that fancy midtown restaurant with its chandeliers, dripping crystals like tears, and that faint smell of truffle oil that says, "You're about to overpay for a salad," I should have known Lily had something brewing. She never did normal. No, my sister liked fireworks, preferably the kind that sings your eyebrows. Lily greeted me with that trademark movie star pout and a champagne glass already half drained. "Happy birthday, Faye," she said, voice pitched just sweet enough to sound rehearsed. Mom sat beside her, adjusting her pearls, pretending not to judge the waiter's pronunciation of bruschetta. They made a picture that could have gone in a lifestyle magazine. Golden daughter and polished mother. And me? I was the spare spoon in the drawer, useful when needed but mostly forgotten. Still, I took my seat, told myself tonight will be polite, and smiled like the world hadn't been tilted slightly off axis since Dad's funeral 3 months ago. We ordered, we clinked glasses. Lily even gave a little toast about new beginnings, which made Mom tear up because she's allergic to real emotion and substitutes sentimentality instead. For about 10 glorious minutes, I believed we were maybe, finally, healing. Then Lily slid that box across the white tablecloth, silver paper neatly creased, a gold ribbon tied with surgical precision. "Go on," she said, grin hovering. My gut did that slow, icy flip, but I opened it. I always open what Lily gives me. It's instinct, part hope, part self-destruction. Inside was a home DNA kit, plastic tube, sterile swab, branded receipt tucked underneath like garnish. The restaurant hum stuttered down to silence. Forks stopped midair. Mom blinked, and then, "Oh God," she smirked. Lily tilted her head. "Maybe this'll settle what everyone's been wondering," she chirped. I asked, voice steady somehow, "And what's that?" She leaned in until I could see the tiny crack in her lipstick. "Why you never quite fit, sis." Mom giggled behind her napkin. It was the sound of every Sunday I'd ever spent sitting in their living room, while Lily commanded the spotlight and I served the cheese board. Truthfully, I didn't yell. I didn't even breathe loudly. I just nodded, placed the box down gently beside my untouched tiramisu and said, "Lovely gift, really thoughtful." That was all. But inside, everything was splitting like glass. The drive home was one blur of yellow lights and burnt shame. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel. Not from the January cold, but from something ancient. The old mix of rage and useless hope. That feeling when you realize a wound you thought had scarred actually just scabbed over. The DNA kit sat on the passenger seat, that ridiculous little box, quiet and heavy. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Of course, Lily's gift would come shrink-wrapped in cruelty. Of course, Mom had laughed. It was tradition. Funny thing though, I didn't throw it away. I kept staring at it during red lights, at how sterile it looked, how deliberate. Lily's jokes were usually lazy, a jab here, a cutting comment there. But this had research, intention, timing. She'd planned it like a presentation. So what was the goal? Humiliate me? Sure, standard Lily routine. But maybe something else lurked underneath. By the time I reached my apartment, my anger had cooled into something more precise. I set the box on my kitchen counter and made coffee I didn't need. Steam fogged my glasses. Somewhere between my second and third sip, a very inconvenient thought appeared. What if she was hinting at something real? Because, you see, the insult didn't sting for being new. It stung because part of me had wondered that exact thing my entire life. Growing up, our house always hummed with tension disguised as perfection. We had the suburban checklist, gleaming driveway, hydrangeas in formation, choir boy father, club committee mother, and of course Lily, the family's self-appointed PR campaign. Then there was me, quieter, darker-haired, perpetually reading instead of performing. Even our family photos looked like bad Photoshop Lily, glowing in the middle. Me, slightly out of focus at the edge like I'd wandered in from a stranger's graduation party. I used to think that maybe love had a quota and Lily simply filed the paperwork faster, but small things chipped at that illusion. Dad's stiff good girl muttered at my achievements. Mom's way of praising Lily's detentions as spirited, the graduation they both missed because Lily wasn't feeling well. At 18, standing in my cap and gown alone, I promised myself distance. And I kept it. College, work, bills, all without them. Yet somehow, I still answered their calls, attended Christmas dinners, and hoped, God help me, for a crumb of validation. So, when Lily brought out that DNA test, she wasn't just mocking my biology. She was twisting every insecurity she and Mom had spent decades planting. But maybe she'd overplayed her hand this time. 3 days later, I cracked. I opened the kit. The cotton swab scratched the inside of my cheek like a dare. I almost laughed thinking about Lily waiting for the punchline. She always thought pain was the finale. She didn't realize it could also be a beginning. While I waited for the results, someone flipped the nostalgia switch in my brain. Little flashes of family moments replayed and warped. Dad calling Lily princess, Mom calling me dependable. Lily's tantrums forgiven, my quiet obedience ignored. It's strange revisiting your own memories when you suspect they were built on false paperwork. You start rewriting every script. Maybe Dad's distance wasn't arbitrary. Maybe Mom's coldness was fear. Maybe everyone's love was a cover-up. A week later, curiosity outmuscled dread. I drove to Mom's place under the excuse of dropping off a scarf. The house looked smaller than I remembered, but still suffocatingly perfect. When she opened the door, her smile flickered. Faye, honey, what a surprise! Inside, the air smelled like cleaning polish and unspoken things. Lily's voice drifted from the kitchen, low and annoyed on the phone. No. The lawyer said next Friday, stop bothering me. Something clanged, a cabinet shutting too hard. I walked down the hallway lined with our portraits. Lily aged like fine wine in hers. My photo looked like an ID badge for a job I didn't want. Mom followed me, wringing her hands. I wish you'd called first. Everything's such a mess these days. Still figuring out Dad's estate? I asked casually. Her neck stiffened. Yes. These things take time. I nodded, pretending to browse a shelf. That's when I noticed a tidy row of red binders labeled with the family name, one for each year Lily's extracurricular scrapbook. Mine, I realized with a hollow laugh, was missing entirely. When I left, my pockets held something else, a photograph I'd found tucked behind the hymn books in the study. A man, early 30s maybe, holding a baby with hair like mined arc, soft, defiant. The gentleness in his eyes startled me. On the back, 2 words in Mom's unmistakable handwriting, "Forgive me." My stomach dropped. Whoever he wasn't my father. And suddenly, the DNA kit wasn't a joke anymore. It was evidence. 2 weeks later, the email arrived. Subject line: Your results are ready. My finger hovered over the trackpad so long the screen dimmed. When I finally clicked, the world tilted. I wasn't related to any of the Carters by blood, but that wasn't the real shock. The real blow was the name at the top. Parent-child match. Richard Hayes. I almost laughed. Richard Hayes, the billionaire. The philanthropist plastered across business magazines. The same man whose company had saved Dad's factory decades ago after a financial miracle. I dug deeper, scouring old articles, reading lines that made my pulse sprint. Hayes Ventures invests in Carter Engineering following personal negotiations. The date 2 weeks after my birth. Oh, Mom. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by printouts like a conspiracy theorist. and whispered, "So that's it. Mom had an affair, got pregnant, Dad found out. Hayes paid to keep the secret and the family afloat." In the first awkward, unwanted Faye was the living receipt. But what they hadn't expected was that secret babies grow up, and sometimes they learn to lawyer up. The following morning, before fear could talk me out of it, I called one of those ruthless estate attorneys whose voice alone sounds like litigation. "I need your help," I said. "There's been deception." Over the next week, puzzle pieces slotted into horrifying order. Lily wasn't plotting that dinner out of sisterly spite alone. She was positioning herself to inherit without contest. See, Dad's will hadn't yet been read, and Lily, ever the opportunist, wanted my disqualification ready. But she didn't realize Dad had left his own paper trail. The will reading happened in this sterile conference room overlooking Midtown traffic. I dressed sharply, not to impress, but to signal endurance. Lily sauntered in as if stepping onto a runway, Mom trailing behind like a wilted corsage. My attorney gave me a tiny nod, the kind that says, "Steady." When the old lawyer began, Lily practically vibrated with self-assurance. To my daughter Lily, he read the sum of $50,000. Her expression collapsed mid-smile like a tower losing power. "That's it?" she barked. The lawyer continued, mercilessly unbothered, and to my daughter Faye. The word daughter hung there, deliberate. The remainder of my estate and majority ownership of the company. Silence. Absolute. Lily sputtered, "She's not his child. I have proof." She slammed down the printed DNA results. My own copy she must have stolen somehow, and looked triumphantly toward Mom, expecting backup. Mom looked down at her manicure instead. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Carter anticipated this claim. "Please note the attached addendum." He read aloud the words that turned my bones to water. Dad had known since I was 2 years old. Known everything. And though he'd never shown love, he'd seen me. "Blood does not make a successor," he'd written. "Character does." I kid you not, for a second I couldn't inhale. Years of being invisible, and suddenly I was visible in black ink. Lily lost it, of course. Accusations, tears, theatrics. And then the lawyer placed a black folder before her like a magician's reveal. Inside were receipts, literal and metaphorical. The private investigator Dad had hired after his first heart scare had uncovered Lily's loans. Her manipulation of Mom. Even a recorded call plotting to declare Dad incompetent. It was all there. She went gray reading it. And when the recording played, her own voice saying she'd put Mom in a care home and sell the house, I saw her crumble for the first time in her life. That was Dad's final move. Poetic justice disguised as probate. Lily left that room nearly mute. I didn't gloat. Honestly, I just felt hollow. Because victory over cruelty isn't bliss. It's silence after years of noise. Mom stayed seated, crying quietly, and asked in this tiny voice, "Can you forgive me?" Forgiveness, I told her, isn't time travel. It doesn't rewrite the past. It just stops it from owning the rest of you. So, yes, I forgave her, but I built boundaries thick enough to be architectural marvels. Now I own the Carter estate, ironic as that sounds. I pay Mom's bills, keep Lily banned from manipulating her, and donate the rest of the money to a foundation for kids who've grown up invisible like I once was. Kids who were told to shrink. Kids who never once got the chocolate cake they wanted. Oh, and about Richard Hayes? He'd passed away 2 years before all this. But his lawyer found me after the will hit the papers. Apparently, he'd known I existed, followed my life from afar. Even left a small trust and a letter. "You were never a mistake, Faye." I read it until the ink blurred. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to feel small again, expecting Lily's sneer in my ear. But then I look around the cottage I bought upstate, quiet, wildflowers at the porch, and the feeling passes. I sip coffee, listen to the wind, and realize that being another man's mistake was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to become my own salvation. So, if you've ever sat at a dinner table pretending the lemon cake was what you wanted just to keep the peace, trust me, I know that taste. But the moment you decide peace shouldn't taste like sacrifice, that's the moment life starts to shift in your favor. Thanks for listening to my story. If it hits something in you, if you've ever rebuilt yourself from the ashes of someone else's lies, subscribe to Revenge Diary. Share this with every quiet person who deserves their own spotlight. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't payback, it's peace.